You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. You know, I've had a lot of conversations recently and with clients, with guests on this show, with business associates, and I'm really identifying I think a common problem that a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from, and that is the challenge of just getting started. To get out of analysis paralysis and go with your instinct, go with your gut, let go, be bold, and take action. And society is really not set up to take advantage of that. It's urging you to be cautious, to be careful, look before you leap, and be very careful. So, as rebelpreneurs and as entrepreneurs, we have to really work on this mindset and not get bogged down with so many great ideas that we never take action on. So I'm really excited to have today's guest, Brian Ondrako. He is the host of the Just Get Started podcast. I love that name. And he interviews entrepreneurs and founders about their unique journeys and how they keep moving forward. That's the key to achieve ultimate fulfillment. His mission in life is to help our younger generations to navigate a better journey that leads to self-discovery at an earlier age. Brian, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Ralph, I appreciate it. Grateful to be here.
I'm really excited to be able to speak with you and to get your thoughts on how we can get out of this analysis paralysis, for lack of a better term. I think we all relate to that. How do we overcome the fear, become more self-aware, build those good habits? These are all topics that you are an expert in. First, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started doing this, and what brought you into this realm of doing the podcasting thing?
Well, I'll take it. I appreciate the kind words. I don't know if I'll go as far as expert. It's just learning through a lot of trial and error and self-discovery. I think you put that earlier on. You mentioned that, and it's something we can get back to. I found that I was living, and by the way, nothing wrong with it, but what you would consider kind of in your opening, like an average life. Like, hey, society says, go to school, get a job, build your way up in the company, get married, have kids, and the whole nine. And as I did that, it kind of made me think and kind of ponder, like, wait a minute, is this what life's about? And I was kind of in my mid to late 20s, and I just got married, and I was about to have my first child, or just did right around that time. And I had these thoughts of like, wait a minute, is this who I am? I'm just going to kind of work for the man, if you will, right? And go through that process and, retire in 30 years and the whole nine. And I kind of started to think back, and this is really kind of turning into what you just mentioned, was I started to really think back of like, what did I do when I was younger? What are some of the things that really got me, jazzed up and excited and curious? And it was a lot of things I was doing around what you might consider back then as like entrepreneurship, like having a job when I was 11 years old and as a paper carrier. Like I had to run my own business basically doing that. And those type of things as I kind of went through my teenage years, and those kind of got shuffled away a little bit. Even though I was, teaching golf for a living and I was running my own teaching business, I still didn't feel though that it was like a full throttle, like making an impact on the world, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that's really where the change happened. So not to get too long-winded, but I think the whole idea of the podcast came after a couple of years of really self-discovery, self-awareness on, wait, where am I now? And then where do I ultimately want to be as I get into my 30s and, hopefully get into my 40s and 50s and beyond. I live a long life. And that's kind of that change of mentality. I kind of jokingly call it my Renaissance period, where like I have this new idea of like deep learning and curiosity that ultimately propelled me to doing many things, but one of them starting the podcast called Just Get Started.
Excellent. So you're using your podcast to connect with entrepreneurs and founders and figure out their journey and how they keep moving forward. How does that connect with your mission to help younger generations to navigate and to experience that self-discovery in the business context? Do you see that as being more and more critical for a younger generation to really catch that spirit and really find out who they are and make their impact on the world?
Yeah, you're right. That's kind of, it's funny. And if I can share this, like the reason I started the podcast, I think is interesting for a lot of folks out there. You mentioned at the beginning, kind of overcoming the fear. I was going to start the podcast in 2015 and I delayed for 2 years because of fear. I was worried about what people would say. Would I get judged? Am I going to be good enough? All of the things every single person listening to this probably goes through on a daily, weekly basis.
Yeah, I go through it every day.
Eventually, I just had to kind of, look myself in the mirror and say, dude, like, this is what you want to do. There's reasons why you want to do this and where you think you can be good at it. Let's just do it. And that's actually why it was called Just Get Started. Like I thought about doing podcast. Like I'm a big 49ers fan. I thought about doing like a football podcast. I thought about, golf. I thought about all these different, I'm big into sales, but I landed on Just Get Started because yes, it goes to my mission, but it's also, I know there's people out there listening right now that are in the same boat. They have an idea, they have a side hustle, they have something, who knows, that they might maybe want to lose 50 pounds, whatever it is, they want to do something with their life. And it's just taking that first step, even if it's very small, to get on that new path. So that's where Just Get Started began. And yeah, the reason I decided to interview entrepreneurs, founders, and those type, one, it catered to the folks that, I kind of wanted to be, if you will, right? I wanted to, in terms of starting my own business and doing things like that. So it was an opportunity to have others learn similar things if they were in that boat. But to the younger generation, it was to expose a lot of people to realize that there's everyday people that, I would love to interview, I'd love to have Oprah Winfrey on, right? Or something like that. But I don't have what you would consider a household name on. But these are people that have been very successful. They're very fulfilled in life. They're doing things they love, and they've been extremely accomplished in their own worlds. And it's showing people that, hey, if you just put the time and effort in and energy and are consistent with your approach, you can also be successful in whatever you want to do. Whether that's blogging or being an author or starting a business or being a business consultant, like there's so many avenues, right? But it's just understanding who you are and not trying to be someone you're not.
I think that is so much more interesting to talk to, quote, ordinary people, about their struggles and their successes as opposed to a celebrity. And because most people, quite frankly, are not celebrities. They're just ordinary people, and they're just trying to figure out how to make sense of their life, how to make sense of this thing in them that they want to do, that they want to turn into a business, or they want to turn into some kind of a movement, and they're just struggling to get started. So I find those stories, that's why I enjoy interviewing the same type of people, because I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know what motivates them and what their story is. So we've got some common ground here.
Absolutely. Well, and if I can add, sure. I think the reason, and maybe this is why you do it, maybe not, I'm not sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the reason I do that is, if I use Oprah Winfrey as an example, I love to talk to Oprah. She's cool. But Oprah did the same. I mean, Oprah was back on local, news stations back, years and years ago, and she worked her tail off to get to where she is. Right. Mm-hmm. But there's such a wide gap between where she is now and then. By talking to folks that are still very either early, or maybe they've had success for 10 or 15 years, but again, they haven't been further away from those people listening in. You can relate to them where you're like, man, you know what? I could get there. I could really get there. And it doesn't seem like such a moonshot. So that's the reason, if I can just layer in, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, And what is the saying? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And a lot of times we don't get started because we get so intimidated and overwhelmed by our comparisons to the celebrities. We don't see how many years it took them to get to where they are and how many steps they had to take. And so we automatically disqualify ourselves and say that we could never do that. But I think the key is you don't have to be that person. Be who you are. And everyone defines success differently. The way one person defines it is not going to be the way you define it, because we're all different. We are unique. We each have different values, different backgrounds, different skill sets. And so I really resonate with your mission of helping people to discover themselves and not to try to be an imitation of someone else.
Right. And I think the discovery, that's why I really look at like the next generation. Not that people, I'm 36 years old. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but not that I don't want to help folks in their 30s and 40s and beyond. But what I realize is that it's very hard to change when you get into midlife and beyond. Very challenging because you have so many other competing priorities and things locked in. But with the younger generations, there's still that opportunity where they realize, hey, you know what? I don't have it figured out either, but they don't have it really figured out. And they haven't, in terms of their schooling or potentially what kind of career path they want to go down. So it's a chance to really influence them early on for them to take a step back and say, hey, what do I really want to do? So I don't waste the next 30 years of my life.
Absolutely. So what is, as we look at the challenge of overcoming fear and just get started, what is the biggest challenge? Why do you think it's so difficult for people? And this could be your experience or just your experience in general with the people that you work with and the people that you interview and talk to. Why is it so hard for us to get started? What's the problem?
Yeah, what I've experienced personally, and to surprise some of the people I've interviewed and getting their perspective. I think part of it, if I can give you a couple different angles, right? Part of it, I think, is a lack of self-awareness. I know that was me personally, is not realizing truly who I am and what makes me tick, and almost leading, I like to say kind of lack of self-awareness leads to lack of self-love. And I think you have to have that self-love and like really believe like I'm comfortable in my own skin. Whatever happens, whatever people say, I'm comfortable. And if not, I believe decisions start to be made for other people. And that's why someone buys the BMW or buys the big house or does certain things and gets in a lot of debt, because they're trying to look a certain way to certain people instead of being like, no, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. So I think that's a big part of it is that self-awareness. That took me a long time to really grasp onto. I'm still working on it, but I think I have a little bit more under control now than I did, say, 5 years ago. And that's helped me make a lot better decisions in my life. One of the other things is I'm a logical person. I think we outsmart ourselves. We try to think it's the hardest thing in the world, or we have to do these 15 different steps to be able to, and it's just, as you mentioned, the kind of that quote there, right? It's the first step. Yeah. Just go out and do it. I always use fitness. Health and fitness are massive in my life. If you want to go out and get in the best shape of your life or eat better, well, just go do it tomorrow. Like, go walk around the block. You don't have to run a marathon tomorrow. Just go walk around the block. And then maybe the next day it's 2 blocks, and then maybe you run to the end of the street. Those type of things, like do the small wins and don't outsmart yourself or try to overthink the process and think it's grander than it is. I think sometimes when goals are good, but if you set that flag in the distance, like, hey, in 5 years, I want to be X, that's a lot of pressure. Because there's a million things that have to happen between now and that 5 years. But to my fitness example, if you say, hey, you know what? I just want to be able to run to the end of the street. Okay, well, that's a little more achievable. Let's set that very, very short-term goal. And then just try to break that by a little bit each and every day. And I think some of those very short, achievable goals ultimately help the momentum roll down the hill and get you on the right path. So I would say those are probably 2 big things, at least that I've seen. in terms of my own personal, that's kind of helped me get over the bar, if you will.
Sure. Well, I think that's really good advice. And I see this with clients all the time. And then I see it with myself is we tend to conceive of a goal, either for life or for business. And we create a project, and we feel as if we have to map out the whole thing from life to death, all 50 steps and all of the outlines and the milestones and all of the, 1,000 different things. And it's so overwhelming that we never even get started. We never take action because we overwhelm ourselves by trying to eat the whole elephant all at once instead of just one bite at a time. And what I'd like in my time management system by David Allen, Getting Things Done, there's a place in that system to look at the big picture, but it eventually comes right down to next actions. Not the next 10 actions, but what is the very next thing that you need to do to move yourself, your business, this project, whatever. What is the next thing you need to do to move it forward? Do that. Complete that. Now, what's the next thing? And by getting it down to the level of the simple, to the ridiculously simple, it makes it so much easier to just get started because you're not necessarily beginning with the end in mind. You're just right at that moment focused on what have I got to do now? What have I got to do next? What can I do today? And then you build from there. You build that momentum. And before you know it, you're making incredible progress. But you're absolutely right. You're moving forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because even, yourself, I'm sure you would agree with this. Like 10 years ago, would you think you'd be sitting here doing this interview right now or doing maybe what you're doing? Probably not.
No.
Right. And I even look at what I'm doing now. Like the podcast wasn't in my mind, again, 2014, 6 years ago. Now, again, the podcast is one of a few things, but that's just an example of like, we don't know. The way I've defined it in my mind, and I kind of speak about it, is not to have that flag in the distance, right? Where it's like a defined point. I kind of call it the North Star, meaning you're never reaching it, right? The North Star is always out there. But if you, like, again, my mission, as I said, helping the next generation in terms of from a health and wellness and education standpoint, well, that allows me to make decisions that are leading toward that. But it doesn't mean I have to have a defined, like, this is what I'm going to do, because that may change next year. But as long as I'm going down that path, it's leading to me to fulfillment. So I think that's something maybe a lot of the listeners might, take that approach of sit back and just kind of, close your eyes and think for 30 minutes and just say, what's my North Star? Like, what kind of impact do I want to have, on this planet, on this world? And maybe start using that as some guideposts to make decisions. Not that I want to be the CEO of this company. That's great. You can have that as a goal, but what's your kind of overarching kind of vision, and then use that as your guidepost, as I say, to go forward.
I love that approach because it sets you up to win instead of to fail. So to use your example, if I set a very specific, a big, hairy goal, big, hairy, audacious goal, specific and time measured or whatever, it could be in 5 years, I'm going to be the CEO of Starbucks. Well, in 5 years, perhaps I'm the CEO of Microsoft, but I'm a failure because what I wanted was Starbucks. So you're setting yourself up with impossible rules. You're making it too easy to fail because you're being too specific. Instead of, I want to be in a position of influence and leadership where I can make a difference every day and love what I do. If you set that for a goal, there's lots of ways that you can achieve that. So it opens the door to many different possibilities, many different opportunities. And then all you have to do, like you were saying, Brian, is just see, does this line up with my North Star? Does it line up? Is it congruent with who I am and what my vision and my purpose is? If it is, great, go for it. If not, you can take a pass on that and look for something else that is in alignment, but you're not locked into a single goal or a single strategy you think you have to get that accomplished. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I think too, when I'm thinking about it, when you're doing research for a thesis or a dissertation, a lot of times they want you to outline the whole thing. And what I learned is it's much better to do some research and see where the data takes you, and then kind of develop your thesis and your paper. I don't know what I don't know. And when you apply that to life, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what opportunities will present themselves. We don't know what obstacles are out there. So if you stay flexible in your approach, there's lots of ways that you can win in life, lots of ways that you can win in business, and we can't predict all of those different scenarios, and there's no need to. We can just be guided by that North Star.
Yeah, Rob, if I can give you a real world example, this might really hit home with a lot of folks listening. What you just said there, and I use the word serendipity a lot because I think there's such a key point there that we don't know we don't know what's going to. I mean, look what's going on in the world today. Like, we have no idea what's going to happen. But we were talking. Obviously, we got connected with Justin Lafazan. You had on as a guest recently. I got introduced to Justin. So I look at it like this: if I didn't start the podcast, I would have not have gotten introduced to Brian Wish, this really awesome guy, and who introduced me to Justin Lafazan to have on my podcast. And Justin and I became close, really good relationship there. He's the one that invited me to, their Next Gen Summit that they do, that Entrepreneur Group does in New York every year, every June. So I went last year, and it was life changing in terms of the people I met and everything that went on there. And I'm still close with a lot of those people I met. The reason I bring that story up is if I was fearful and never started the podcast and never went down that path, I would have never, met Brian, never met Justin, never ultimately went to the Next Gen Summit. And now I look at all the things that has led me to in terms of my thinking, the new circles that I'm involved with, those type of things. Now, again, if I never met them, right, I'd be on a different path. I never would have even thought of it. But the fact that I got on this path and it's been extremely impactful to my life, I look at that as a very serendipitous moment that would not have happened if I kind of just sat in my house and said, I'm not going to do a podcast. I'm just too scared to do it.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Just those little moments can ultimately have massive impacts on your life.
Absolutely. So I hope everyone that's listening take stock of where you are. Take a look at your relationships, your opportunities. Don't see them as risks. See them as opportunities to refine and to discover who you are, and look for those serendipitous moments in life and business, because they are everywhere, but you've got to step into it. So Just Get Started is the name of the podcast, hosted by Brian Ondrako. Brian, what are you working on right now besides the podcast that's got you really excited?
I got a couple of things that are fun. I'm finishing up my first children's book. Again, another fun story. I'm sure there's people out there similar to this. I wrote this book. It's kind of like a Dr. Seuss type rhyming book, but it's called Luke's First Round of Golf. So I'm a big golfer. I have a son, and when he was born, I kind of wrote this book. I had 70% of it done, and I shelved it. I said, what am I thinking? I'm writing a children's book. Get out of here. Well, I pulled it back out over a year ago, and I said, I'm finishing this damn thing. And sure enough, we're basically done. I'm working with my illustrator now. We should be done, if not by the end of this month, first part of April. So that should be launching sometime at worst in April. Again, Luke's First Round of Golf. And it's just a fun book about, a father and son and their relationship, and, the son being really excited to actually go out and play his first round with his dad, and some of those lessons that you learn with golf. I don't know if you're a golfer or not, Ralph, but some of the different lessons that you learn from golf and the great morals that it gives. Ironically, what's cool is my son played his first round of golf with me this past year on his own ball on a par 3 course. So that was one of those cool dad moments. So yeah, doing that. And then I have another something I'm starting right now is going again to my mission is I'm starting a business around healthy kids lunches. So I actually see this gap in the market where, kids that are basically malnourished at lunch aren't getting the right food. A lot of the food is unhealthy. So I'm actually creating a business that will be, delivering healthy kids lunches to parents so they can put them in the kids' school lunch every day. And it's a really neat mission because there's some different charitable aspects to it in terms of giving to local charities and shelters and stuff in the Raleigh-Durham area where I live. So I'm excited. Very early stages of that, but it's picking up a lot of momentum, and excited for that to kind of take form as the year goes on into next year.
Yeah, very cool. And once again, these are things that align with your purpose, but not things that would just occur to you 5 years ago or 2 years ago, maybe, that, oh, this is definitely my mission in life is to do this. But you see these opportunities, you make these connections, and then it makes total sense once you step into it and just get started, right?
Yeah. And I think the self-awareness piece is really big, because I always said for many years, and as I mentioned earlier, want to start my own business and stuff. It was always like, hey, I'm going to start a software business. And because that was the cool thing to say, right? I got this big technology company and we have this cool software and all that. When I really sat down and thought about it, I said, wait a minute, Brian, you're a homebody. You like being in the area you live. Not that I don't like traveling here and there, but I said, I like being here. I'm really big into health and nutrition, and I want to help the next generation, the kids and those type. I said, wow, well, that narrows down the focus in terms of different businesses and stuff I want to start. So that when this idea actually sounds weird, but actually had a dream, and this idea popped in my head like last fall, and it's been sitting on it for a little while. I said, all right, I got to go forward with this. So it's kind of cool how things happen like that. But as you mentioned, you kind of got to take the reins and just see, hey, what's the worst that happens? Let's just try it out and let's see, since it's something I do believe in and I'm passionate about.
Excellent. Well, I love your energy and I love the things that you're doing, and it's been a real pleasure to chat with you and to pick your brain a little bit. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with?
What I would say is just kind of going back to that self-awareness piece is just take a look in the mirror and figure out what you want to do with your life. And do it from a slightly selfish lens. That's okay. For the longest time, I was so worried about what were others going to think, or how is this going to impact others. I didn't take a step back and say, Brian, you have to be happy. If you're not happy, you're not going to be happy around other people, right? Right. So I think the biggest thing is really look in the mirror and have that, that talk to yourself. I'll leave with two things. And again, because I can go down that path. I actually have two questions written on my mirror right now. One is one I came up with. One is another one I'll share. But the first one that I came up with, the question just says, why can't it be you? And I look at that every single day and I repeat it back to myself, because I get down on myself so much thinking that, well, it's someone else that can create that business, or someone's better suited to do that, or they have more resources, or whatever the case is. So that question where, why can't it be you, really gives me the thought that, no, dude, you can do it. Why can't you be the one that changes the world? Why can't you be the one that makes a positive impact? So that one really gets me, and it allows me to question myself and make sure that I'm kind of positively looking at the world. And then the other one, actually, I got this from, I don't know if you know David Goggins, a phenomenal individual. I love following this guy. He's got a lot of passion, but he had a great book I'd recommend to all the listeners out there called Can't Hurt Me. And I'd recommend get the audio version. I think it's phenomenal. But one of the things he mentions in there, and the question he asks himself is, why are you here? And that's another question I have on my mirror as well. Why are you here? Again, going back to, am I just here just to kind of go through the motions and just kind of, whatever? Or am I here to actually make an impact, not only be fulfilled myself, but make a positive impact of the people around me? So again, I use that question a lot to really kick me back into gear when I lose focus, that, hey, I have a certain mission now. I have an impact that I want to make that could really help hundreds, thousands of kids and adults and other folks impact their lives and the people that they're around. So I think those are the two things that I put on my mirror, whether you use those or maybe come up with your own. I think always, readdressing every single day or every single week, and don't just get kind of, settled, always trying to kick yourself out of that comfort zone and make sure that you're moving forward. That'd be kind of my lasting thought, I guess.
Excellent. I love that. Why can't it be you, and why are you here?
Are you here?
I think those are great questions. And so if you're looking for some daily motivation, that's a good place to start. Write those questions down and ask those questions of yourself, and get started. Just get started on your business, on your life, whatever your plan, whatever your purpose is. Why can it be you, and why are you here? I've been speaking with Brian Ondrako. He is the host of the Just Get Started podcast, which interviews entrepreneurs and founders about their unique journeys and how they keep moving forward to achieve ultimate fulfillment. You can connect with Brian at brianondrako.com. That's Brian, ONDRAKO.com. We'll have that link on the Rebelpreneur website as well. Brian, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today on Rebelpreneur Radio. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ralph. Appreciate you.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.